Hello and welcome to the third pre-recording of the candidate and agent presentation, which is covering the verification and count. So the verification and count will be on the Friday this year, so it will be Friday the 6th of May 2022, and it will start from 9 AM. The count will be held at the House of Sport in Cardiff. For candidates and agents, the count centre will open from 8:30. And if you do wish to appoint any count agents or guests, please ensure that the paperwork is submitted to the returning officer by the 27th of April 22. Anybody attending the count will be required to bring photographic ID, and we would have issued you with a letter to confirm that you are entitled to attend. So please make sure you bring that with you. On arrival at the count, you will see an accreditation desk. Give them your name and details and you'll be issued with a badge or lanyard. That badge or lanyard will also indicate which area of House of Sport you are entitled to observe in. Please make sure that you wear this at all times. And again, please note that there's no admittance unless you've had prior approval. So make sure that anybody that you wish to attend the verification and count has completed the relevant paperwork. You'll notice a number of senior roles at the count which are supporting the process. So there'll be a count manager for each constituency, and they're responsible for the overall conduct of the verification and count. They'll also be doing various announcements throughout the proceedings, including the declaration of results, and they'll adjudicate on any doubtful ballot papers. You'll also see a number of deputy count managers, and their role is to support the count manager throughout the process, but they can also support yourselves as candidates and agents as a single point of contact, and they'll be helping with the adjudication of doubtful ballot papers as well. At each of the counts, you'll see in the middle of the setup a control table with a number of senior officers. Their responsibility is the completion of the verification figures, and during the count they'll also be maintaining the ward team totals and ensuring that all doubtful ballot papers are accounted for as well. So they'll be pulling together the figures for each of the relevant wards. Supporting the count manager, deputy count manager, will be a number of seniors, and they'll all be allocated a particular ward and team. So they'll be responsible for managing the count for that ward allocated, and they'll do this by collating the count sheets and checking all the calculations by the count assistants. We start off at 9 o'clock with the verification, and what this means is that we take all the postal and polling station ballot papers and we check the number of ballot papers we've got against the ballot paper accounts that have been completed either by the postal supervisor or the presiding officer at the polling station. In terms of what this will look like, the ballot papers will be face up. Each ballot box, from whether that's a postal ballot box or a polling station ballot box, is verified separately. You'll see that the ballot papers are counted into bundles of 25, and then a neighbouring count assistant will double check that bundle of 25 for accuracy. The senior managing that ward then will collate the figures for each of the ballot boxes and check these with the control table, just again, as I mentioned, to check that the number of ballot papers in the box matches the ballot paper accounts for accuracy. If there are any discrepancies, the ballot papers will be checked, and the seniors have a checklist of what to do if they do identify any discrepancies, which will be discussed with candidates and agents. But once the figures are approved, all the verified ballot papers will then go into a mixing box. And what that means is that all papers for that particular ward will be mixed, whether they're postal ballot papers or polling station ballot papers. Once we've completed the verification for each ward, if there is a community council within that area, those ballot papers will be sealed, and we'll start those later on in the day. But that particular ward and team will quickly proceed to the count for that ward. You'll notice at the local government elections that we use a different method for counting, and the reason for this is, especially for Cardiff, is we don't have any single member wards. They are all multi-member wards. So sheet counting will be used for every ward in terms of how the count assistants will manage. So the senior will allocate the verified ballot papers amongst the team, and you'll notice that the counters will work in pairs. So one of the counters will be calling out the number of votes for each candidate, and the other count assistant will be marking a vote on the count sheet as they're called out. So this count sheet then is their summary sheet, which will total up the number of votes for any given candidate. And they'll also mark if no votes have been on the ballot paper. So for example, if an elector is entitled to vote for 4 candidates and they vote only for 3, you'll notice at the bottom of the sheet counts an option for no votes, and that just means that we can balance back to the number of ballot papers that have been expected. Once count assistants have finished a count sheet, they'll bundle those together with the ballot papers. They'll bundle those together with the ballot papers, and they'll go to the count senior, who will then collate all the figures for that particular ward. The count senior, when they're collating those figures, will also take into account any doubtful ballot papers. Again, this makes sure that we balance back to the ballot paper account originally. So what are doubtful ballot papers? So doubtful ballot papers are any ballots that don't have an official mark. You may have some where an elector has voted for more candidates than they're entitled to. So for example, on a multi-member ward, if they can vote for up to 3 candidates, but they've marked 4, that would be classed as a doubtful ballot paper. If we can identify a voter on their ballot paper, we do have to mark that as a doubtful as well. Some ballot papers are unmarked and there's no vote, so they wouldn't be included. And then we have others which are void for uncertainty. But again, there'll be an option for candidates and agents to observe any that aren't taken into account in the process. And how we'll do that is we'll have a separate dedicated area for doubtful ballot papers. It will look similar to the one that's on the screen here. So there'll be a small camera area. The count manager or the deputy count manager will place any doubtful ballot papers under the video, and this means that it will be published on a screen which can be seen by a number of candidates and agents, so it will make it easier for you to observe the process. I'm just going to go through what each of the constituencies will look like, and also where to expect that in House of Sport, because it is a very big venue. So Cardiff Central is being managed by Donna and will be supported by myself. And you'll find any of the wards in Cardiff Central in House of Sport 2. The setup for House of Sport 2 and Cardiff Central is that there'll be 5 teams, each will have their own senior, and that senior will be responsible for managing that ward area. You'll notice that the majority just allocated 1 ward, with the exception of Team 5, which is allocated 2. And what's this going to look like in terms of a floor plan? So Cardiff Central, House of Sport 2 is a very big area. So it does accommodate 2 constituencies. As you come through, you will come through past Cardiff South, but you'll see Cardiff Central here at the back of the room then. So in terms of what to expect in the setup, everything will be clearly marked in terms of what team and what ward they're covering. So for example, you've got Team 1, Team 2, Team 3, Team 4 and Team 5. There'll be tables in the middle and seniors in the middle, as I mentioned earlier, that will be managing the control figures and reporting back in terms of making sure everything's accounted for. And over here then there'll be a seating area for candidates and agents to obviously sit down if they need to, or if they wanted to come away, or there's a break in proceedings. And any doubtful ballot papers will be shown in this viewing area here. So it's separate from the count assistants. And again, it just makes it easier in terms of allowing multiple candidates and agents to view at the same time. There are two stages for this hall. So one will host Cardiff Central declarations and announcements, and I'll move on to this one later because that's with regards to Cardiff South. Each of the constituency areas, you will notice that there are two TVs allocated to the room. One television will be to provide information on what's happening across the whole of Cardiff in terms of declarations coming through. And the second screen will support any information on what's happening for that particular constituency. So anything in those wards will come through on screen number 2. So if you do miss any announcements, please check the screens because the information should be there on where we are with the proceedings. So what does Cardiff North look like? This is managed by Ian and will be supported by Claire, and Cardiff North will be placed in House of Sport 1. Again, Cardiff North is split into 5 teams, each of which managing a different ward or a number of wards within that team. Setup for Cardiff North is very similar. So as you come into the room area here, you've got the setup with each of the teams. So team 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. Again, in the centre of the team setup will be the control table and any information in the control room with regards to collating the figures. And similar to the area that we just mentioned, you've got an area for doubtful ballot papers, 2 TV screens for information, plenty of seats and table and sitting areas for candidates and agents when there's break in proceedings, and any declarations and announcements will be at the stage here. Cardiff South will be managed by Gary and supported by James, and you'll find Cardiff South in House of Sport 2, which is being shared with Cardiff Central. Cardiff South is split into 4 teams, and again, each team looking after a particular ward area or maybe more than one ward area. Cardiff South is the same as the screen just showed earlier and is on the left-hand side here. So again, each hosting its own team, so teams 1, 2, 3 and 4, with senior officers supporting the collation of the figures in the middle then. You'll see here as well, there is a doubtful ballot paper area, plenty of table and chairs for candidates and agents, and the information screens. The only difference with this is there is a split with regards to the stage, so any declarations and announcements for Cardiff South, will be on a separate stage from Cardiff Central. Lost where I was then, sorry. Okay, so Cardiff West finally will be managed by Davina, and this will be supported by Leanne, and these will be positioned in House of Sport 3. So for Cardiff West, there are 6 teams, each of which again managing a particular ward or wards. Cardiff West looks slightly different. So in House of Sport 3, as you come in, as you would expect in terms of the team setup, teams 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6. Space in the middle and tables here for the seniors to do the collating of the paperwork. Again, you've got the doubtful ballot paper area for viewing, TV screens for information, plenty of table and chairs for candidates and agents, and any declarations and announcements at the stage area. The difference in this room is at the back of the room, this is actually a roller rink area, so it's slightly separated by panels, and this area is going to host the press and the media. What we'll also be able to do in this area is if there are any interviews with press and media and candidates, that can be hosted in this separate area. So what is the role of the count agent if they're attending? They are there to observe the count process. We welcome obviously any count agents to draw attention to any doubtful ballot papers. If you don't agree with a rejected ballot paper, we can put rejection objected to on that ballot paper, so there's a record of it. And you're also welcome, if there is a break in proceedings, that you can add seals to any of the ballot boxes that we have. So for candidates and agents attending, one of the key things that I wanted to stress is to keep noise to a minimum close to the count tables. With local government elections and multi-member seats, and as I mentioned earlier, the count sheeting method, the noise levels do get a little bit higher because each of the count assistants are calling out candidate's name as they're marking the count sheets. So it's really important that if you are observing, that you keep that noise to a minimum, just so it helps the count assistants more accurately as they go through the process. It's important that you don't distract the count assistants in any way. If you need support, obviously ask one of the seniors or refer to the count manager or deputy count manager. Obviously, with regards to account assistants, they need to be left to proceed in their normal fashion. No mobile phones and no photos to be taken at the count venue. If you do need to sit down as you're taking refreshments, please make sure you do that in a seating area away from the count tables. And House of Sport does have a cafe upstairs, so you're welcome to use the refreshments there as well. So all candidates and agents need to adhere to the Electoral Commission guidelines, and only authorised candidates, agents and guests will be permitted into the count venue. So as I mentioned earlier, it's imperative that paperwork is completed beforehand. I've already mentioned, obviously, not to interrupt or interfere with the verification or count proceedings. And there'll be information around the venue, so please refer to the posters for guidance on the process. Or as and when we can, we'll be providing updates on the television screens to ensure that obviously you're fully informed of where we are in case you've missed any announcements. If you do have any concerns, the team are there to help. So obviously grab the attention of the count manager or deputy count manager, or if needs be, one of the senior officers will also be able to support. I'm going to pause there and I'll be moving on to the spending donations and post-poll reporting, and this will be done by one of my colleagues from the Electoral Commission. Thank you.